Hello everyone and welcome to the updated Awakening Maehwa guide. Thanks to the recent Reboot update, Awakening Maehwa has turned into one of the best assassin classes in BDO, specializing in quick burst damage and high mobility. I decided to make an updated guide with the goal of helping newer and experienced players learn something new while also understanding the highlights of what changed with the reboot. Make sure to check out the timestamps at the bottom of the video to help you navigate through the guide. Let's jump right in. Alright, so my thoughts on the reworks for Maehwa specifically. So the rework for Maehwa was actually an overall positive. I was actually very pleased with the results of it. They targeted damage as well as cooldown reduction on a lot of our skills, a lot of our key skills that we use. And they incorporated a new skill, Ice Fang. That's a 4-guard based skill with a really low cooldown and high damage output for trading. They did some new skill connections. It gives us a lot of variety in terms of utilizing our awakening kit. But there were some negatives, I guess you could say, about the rework. Some players might feel that because of all the damage increases and cooldown reductions on some of the more heavy damage skills now, the counterplay approach was a little bit nerfed. And I understand where they're coming from, but I don't personally feel that that's necessarily the case. The meta is just shifted more towards SA trading and whatnot, and this is another form of counterplay, in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments, but we're gonna go ahead and get into the guide now. As you see here, this is the stats screen. If you press P, you'll see this. Highlighted is the desired stats. You want to have your breath and health as high as possible. The attack speed, movement speed as high as possible. Crit, you can have, relatively lower compared, but ideally you would want it at 5. And then the stamina is also a highly valued stat that I recommend getting as much as you possibly can while, making sure you don't sacrifice attack damage and defensive capability. In my opinion, Maehwa is an assassin type class and should prioritize killing over being tanky, as we lack skill buffs that maximize evasion as a build. That being said, it works. Alright, so in this section here, we're going to be going over the skills, which ones you want to learn, which ones you want to lock, and which ones you want to have on your hotbar. So when it comes to what skills you want to pick up, when it comes to Awakening, basically everything. You don't need Tenacious Edge, so you don't have to spend skill points in here if you don't want to. New Year's Eve as well, it's kind of like a filler skill, but we don't even use New Year's Eve anymore since the rework. So when it comes to the main skills, this is where it's going to be focused more around PvP when you start getting into your tech related stuff and your CC tricks and stuff like that. We have Absolute Backstep Slash, Absolute Blind Thrust, Absolute Blind Slash, Absolute Carver is worth picking up, Absolute D-Bite, Absolute Red Moon, Absolute Cyclone Slash, Absolute Stub Arrow. When it comes to the arrow skills, definitely start off with Double Shot first, and then from there it's kind of up to you, but I recommend getting Grapple Arrow for extra mobility purposes, as well as Absolute Charge Stub Arrow, and then Evasive Shot, in that order, in my personal opinion. Absolute Charge Stub Arrow actually hits pretty hard right now, so it's a great KS tool. Absolute Blooming is another good one to pick up. Absolute Maehwa's Will. When it comes to the kicks, I only recommend one specific kick, and that's Absolute Roundhouse Kick. It does a KD, so it's really great for doing long combos on, say, an evasion target. Pick up Tiger Blade, and then all your passives. When it comes to the skill enhancements, the ones I recommend are Ultimate Maehwa's Will, Blooming Step, and Decapitating Cyclone, with an honorable mention of Blooming Stride as an option as well. Big difference there is Blooming Step is better for engage and disengage potential and also jumping off terrain. Blooming Stride is a shorter distance that it does a little jump for, and its perk is it does a minus 50% movement slow, so that's why it could be potentially nice. Both of them have 4-guard though. So that's the skills to learn. Now we'll get into the ones that we lock. This section is pretty straightforward. There's only a few that I would recommend locking. Board Roll, definitely lock that so you don't accidentally get yourself killed. Lock Retaliation, in my opinion, I think it's garbage now since they nerfed it. You could arguably lock Cyclone Slash and use it from Hotbar. You don't need to lock it though, but some do, some don't. You could lock Carver if you want to, if it's not something you plan on using, so you don't accidentally do it when you're trying to do blooming, for example, but I'm on and off with it. I sometimes lock it, sometimes I don't. And that's it for the main skills. When it comes to Awakening, there's only one skill I'd really even consider locking, and that's the E buff. And the only reason for that is because you'll just use it on your hotbar. The main reason is its keybind is E, and it might mess with other skills like Ice Fang or Frostflower when you're comboing, so you don't want that. So our skills that we'll have on hotbar is Decapitating Cyclone, Cyclone Slash, Oppression because it's only usable via hotbar, Red Moon because it makes it easier to cancel Red Moon if you use it from hotbar instead of using the keybind, Moonlight Dash. This is the only way to use Moonlight Dash independently from Petal Bloom, so it's an option if you want. I don't really use it that often personally, but it is available there, and it actually does a decent amount of damage for chip damage. And then Tiger Blade, and of course if you had E-buff locked, you would have it as a hotbar item as well. I will have skill builds listed in description for basically newer players leveling up a seasoned character, and then there's going to be one for 1400 skill points, which basically when you first get into Awakening and you're learning all the skills, and then a 1700 plus one for, you know, starting to get into more PvP with the Awakening kit. So alright, in this section here we're going to be going over the core skills. Basically the main ones that I would recommend is Petal Drill for 1v1s and Moonrise for basically everything else content wise. PvE, large scale, 1vx, you can even do it for 1v1s, that's perfectly fine too. Tenacious Edge will give you a 4 guard, and that's pretty garbage. Sticky Snowflake will give you a super armor, but the cooldown is 15 seconds, so it's not up a lot of the time. Frost Pillars having a knockdown effect. This is an okay one. Petal Bloom getting a knockdown effect is also really good, but it's a 12-second cooldown. So yeah, that'll come down to the Drill, which gives it a bound effect, and it's a 5-second cooldown, so you're having a bound like all the time, which is really good. That's why I recommend it for 1v1s. And then Moonrise Super Armor effect, you can use basically your combo skill and not get peeled, which is super important in large scale. Alright, so in this section here we're going to be going over mobility. So unlike other classes, Maehwa actually has it pretty nice when it comes to mobility. We don't have a lot of skills that we really need to use in order to be mobile. Say like Valkyrie, that has to have like an entire mobility combo in order to actually move, which is very unfortunate for them. We only need right click, and that allows us to use chase. Right click, forward right click, that'll allow us to chase around pretty fluidly, and that's how easy our mobility is. But there's some key things you need to know about this, and that's going to be that your stamina is going to drain really fast if you just hold down right click. Some of the basics as far as like helping manage that stamina is chasing and blocking, but if you want to optimize this to make it so that you start regenerating your stamina immediately, you would forward chase left click. What this does is ends the chase animation right away, and it lets you start regenerating your stamina much more quickly. So it doesn't work with back chase, so if you back chase and left click, it's not going to do it right away. You'll do the full twirl animation, but if you do forward chase left click, it'll actually do it immediately so that you start regenerating your stamina as soon as possible. So now that you got the basics down as far as what mobility is like, there are some skills that can also help out with movement as well, whether engaging or disengaging. Some example skills would be Petal Drill, which is a 5-second SA skill. Another ability that's good for mobility is Ice Fang. That's our new skill. It's a 7-second foreguard ability. Some other skills that you can use for mobility that do have stamina costs would be examples like Blind Thrust, Dragon Bite, or even Grapple Arrow. Blind Thrust and D-Bite are typically used as offensive skills, so they're not necessarily always used for mobility. However, you can. So with those skills, there's certain skills that are going to be affected by only attack speed slows and not movement speed slows, whereas Chase is heavily affected by movement speed. So if I were to be hit by a movement speed slow, like Backstep Slash from Lewis here, I'll be chasing at a very slow pace here. This is 50% movement speed, so it's really bad in comparison to normal. We'll let it run out and show you the normal version. So this is chase when it's normal. So that's pretty significant. That allows your opponent to actually catch up to you and then kill you. Because even though you're slowed, you're still using the same stamina. So you're going to be running out of stamina really quickly while making very little distance between you and your opponent. We'll get slowed here one more time and just show another example. So we have Drill, we have Ice Fang, Blooming Step, and those are all the other skills here with Forward Blind Thrust, D-Bite. So that would be an example of all the different kinds of movement you can do without really depending on chase. Alright, so now we're going to get into the second part of movement, which is jumping off cliffs. As you can see here, utilizing chase, you can end up getting a falling animation if the terrain is too high. So you want to use certain skills in order to prevent this from happening. Ice Fang is an example of one you can use. Sleet Step, Blooming Step, and D-Bite are all good examples. Alright, in this section here we're going to be going over the arrow play. So with the reworks, arrow play changed considerably. Before you could actually just stub arrow, charge stub arrow, evasive shots, grapple arrow, all independently with their own separate cooldowns. But things changed now slightly. Some of those skills still have their own independent cooldown, but they're gated behind the stub arrow buff now, essentially. How that works is you're going to use stub arrow or charge stub arrow and you're going to get a buff like this. And as you see here, you're going to be all glowy and stuff, like you're going Super Saiyan or something. And this buff shows that you have stub arrow times 2. That means you have 2 stub arrows left. So that means you can use stub arrow 2 more times in back-to-back succession without any cooldown. And that means they all will CC. So hypothetically, you have 3 stub arrows to use to CC your opponent. So your iframe is gated behind a buff, the iframe being the evasive shot, right here. So you get your buff, and then you can use evasive shot, or you can use charge stub arrow, and then your buff is gone. So then you have to wait for the cooldown of stub arrow, the old cooldown for stub arrow, to actually be off cooldown again, and then you can get the buffs again, so you have 3 more arrows to shoot. So this is good and bad in their own way. Some people think it's a buff because you have 3 stub arrows now, which is really nice, and some people think it's a nerf because you have your other arrows gated behind the buff, and it's a little clunky as well. There is a little bit of clunkiness with it, at least with getting the first one. So you can counteract some of this clunkiness with the first one by using chase cancel to get out of it. So that's how you can get the buff without actually shooting an arrow. So you have 2 arrows, and you didn't leave yourself in a vulnerable position by getting that first arrow out. So that's a way around the clunkiness. And then of course you can always use charge evasive shot, and that'll be only 1 arrow, and then you can wait for the cooldown to come up and use it again. So, and that's like every 6 seconds, I think you can do that combination. So you can have technically 2 iframes with that. But like I said, it is a little clunky still. So with my ping and being East Coast, it's not very forgiving for me when I try to use charged evasive shot. But for some players that have better ping, it probably works perfectly fine. But the idea is pretty interesting. It just needs to be smoothed out, I think, a little bit, and then it'll be better. The other arrow that I didn't mention was grapple arrow. This one can be used freely without the buff, so no buff currently. If you do backstep slash, you can use grapple arrow just fine. And you can also use it with kicks as well, but the kicks are a little buggy right now, so I'm not going to bother demoing them. Alright, so in this section we're just going to go over the add-ons very briefly. We're not going to go into too much detail at all. Basically, this right here is my duelist setup. This will basically allow you to CC your opponent and deal maximum damage to them, as well as doing maximum damage via chip damage. And then there's the large scale setup here that will allow you to be consistent with doing a lot of chip damage really quickly and safely. I don't prioritize debuffs all that much in my particular playstyle, but there's definitely a viable setups for that. So make sure you choose the style and set up your add-ons the way that works best for you. Alright, in this section we're gonna be going over PvP combos, and I'm gonna be focusing first on just a handful of large-scale based combos and just a few different 1v1 combos. I'm not gonna get into every little nitty-gritty version of every combo, every variant combo out there, because there's just so many possibilities now that it would be an hour-long section. So we're just gonna focus on a few for each respective area of PvP, and we'll go from there. Our bread and butter now is going to be revolving around Ice Fang. So Ice Fang, Frost Pillar, Tip of the Iceberg as an example. It's a really strong combo for large scale because it's all fully protected in the form of frontal guard, and it's great chip damage. So that'll look like this. So you're going to do the first and second hit of Ice Fang, and then Frost Pillar, Tip of the Iceberg. Another example of this would be Petal Drill into Moonrise, Frost Pillar, Tip. So this would be a Super Armor into 4 guard. So it'd be Petal Drill, Moonrise, Frost Pillar, Tip. And that's also a fully protected combo with a couple of the skills being 4 guards. Some other example combos would be like Ice Fang into Petal Bloom. Like say you can pop your E-buff. Petal Bloom gets enhanced heavily by E-buff. So E-buff Petal Bloom will hit like a truck, and you can lead off with a few different skills like Ice Fang or Petal Drill. So you can do the Ice Fang into Petal Bloom version. And you don't have to charge it up like I did. You can release it immediately, and it flows really well. The skill connection is really smooth, so that's really nice. Those are just really safe combos to use in large scale. Either chip damage, kill stealing, or just outright deleting your opponent if you have enough gear for it. Those are all very capable of performing at that. Alright, so in this part of the combos, we're going to be going over some 1v1 based combos. Now, like I mentioned, there's so many different combos available to us now with the introduction of the new skill Ice Fang and all the new skill connection adjustments that they did. So I'm not going to go over every single combo that's available out there because this would be an hour-long section. We will try to highlight a few of the good to use ones, and then that'll kind of give you a baseline for how to build your own combos from there. I will mention that before you start getting into 1v1 combos, it would be a good idea to have an understanding of the CC mechanics. And InkQ did a CC mechanics guide video a long time ago, roughly 3 years ago, which I will be putting in the description as well as in the top right as a tag for you. So I would definitely reference that if you don't have a true understanding of the CC mechanics yet. Alright, so the first combo I'm going to show is going to be based off of if you have the core Petal Drill for the bound. So really solid combo. There is some unprotected aspects to it, so if you're trying to fight multiple opponents, it's definitely not good to use, so that's why it's a 1v1 based combo. Alright, this next combo will be utilizing a stiff first, so any stiff, it doesn't matter which one. In this case, we're going to use 4 blind thrust as the example. The next combo I'm going to show is for more anti-evasion style combo. So this is going to incorporate Sticky Snowflake, Frostfire, Sticky Snowflake. That's what you're really focusing on here, because that's going to be a lot of accuracy-based skills all at once. Alright, in this combo here, we're going to actually use a stub arrow stiff to show an example of a range catch into a combo. So first things first, we'll get our buffs here. Alright, this last combo that I'm going to show here, this is a double KD base combo. Alright, so in this section of the video, we're going to go over some tips and tricks, and this won't be a super long section. This will just go over some of the basic tips and tricks that you'll need to know. Like I do in all my guides, I have to go over the chase cancel because it's going to be a new guide and everyone's going to need to know how to do it. So how you do a chase cancel is, first things first, you need to go to your settings. You need to go to interface settings, action hotkeys. You're going to look for the WW key right here. And you're going to set this to a particular key of your choice. For me personally, I set the numpad 5 and I allocated that to a mouse button so that I can use it more freely. Once you do that, in pre-awaken only, you can chase cancel by holding down that WW key and left click. So it looks like this. So that's how you use the chase cancel. Very important to know how to do that because you're going to want to use it in some instances of engaging or disengaging on opponents. Alright, so in this next tips and tricks, we're going to be going over forward blind thrust usage. So this is pretty strong. It's pretty OP for being able to get behind people's forward guards. Unfortunately, since all the meta shifting, getting more towards just basically everyone being full super armor, it's lost a lot of its effectiveness in my opinion, but overall it's still really good to use, especially versus classes that still primarily focus around frontal guards, S blocks, and just normal guards that aren't super armor guards. So how you do this is you will press in awakening, pre-awakening stance, your main skill. You will press W, left click, and space, and that will be what you do in order to perform a forward blind thrust. Now, the skill works as two parts. There's a lunge stab portion, and then there is a the stab at the end that actually CCs. At the part where you actually do the stab and CC will be the part that you can actually use your camera to turn, and that's how you would bypass someone's frontal guard. Alright, so in this tips and tricks section, we're going to be going over the cyclones, decapitating cyclone and cyclone slash. So here we have a pretty considerable distance here, and I'm going to throw a cyclone slash. I'm going to float only the middle guy there, and then I'm going to do decapitating cyclone. And as you can see, that's a massive difference between the two. It's just much better for large scale fights. You throw it into the ball, you can float multiple people with it. It's really useful. So I'm going to throw Cyclone Slash at Lewis there, and as you can see, I can float him just fine. Same thing with Decapitating Cyclone. I can float multiple people. He actually blocked right there, otherwise he would have been floated. So it works from where Lewis is and where I am, so it works perfectly fine either way. Alright, so in this section we're going to be going over the BSR skills. Basically, the highlights for this is the Sticky Snowflake 10% BSR is good to use. It'll dismount people off their horses if you happen to tag them with it, and it does really good damage on any target for that matter, but really effective versus evasion-based targets. The 25% BSR is Cloud Stab. That is a very strong skill. It hits pretty hard, especially with arrow tag damage, and is mostly used as a combo tool. However, you could theoretically use it to do chip damage trading, as Cloud Stab does have a heal on it, so you'll heal back some of the damage you would take in a trade. Next up is our 50% BSR. It will be Moonrise. Honestly, it's not worth the effort to use this one, and it's a waste of BSR. It's such a slow animation for the damage that it does, so highly recommend against using it. It is cool animation though, it's just slow. The 100% is the Petal Bloom skill, and it's honestly is just like the Moonrise as far as like the animation being really long for the damage output it does. It's not really very lethal majority of the time. If you're fighting against anyone that has any amount of gear, it's not going to really do much at all. So the next thing we're going to get into is the hotbar usage of Red Moon. So Red Moon, if you use the keybinds, Shift Q, it basically won't let you cancel it if you use it from any particular awakening stance. So Normally you can cancel Red Moon with Sleep Step, but you can't do that if you are using Shift Q. So let me actually set up my keyboard here so you can see. And then if you do the Hotbar, you can cancel immediately. So I'm going to do Shift Q. I can't cancel at all. I hit Shift and D to do Sleep Step, and I couldn't cancel it at all. Now I'm going to do it with the Hotbar again, just to show you. If you press 4, in my case, I can cancel it immediately. Alright, and the final tips and tricks that I'll show today in this video will be mouse movement. Basically, when you hit the control key, your mouse comes up and you can click to move. What that allows you to do is take certain skills that have elongated animations and reposition them from what they would normally be. So for example, pedal drill. So pedal drill normally just lunges forward based on your camera movement, but with mouse movement you can actually do a complete 180, for example. So mouse movement gives you a lot of flexibility with being able to, say, get behind forward guards. So I can drill behind someone's forward guard and do a bound, or I can use the reach of it to kind of reach around and maybe do a safe CC rather than being like right up in someone's face. So that's another approach to it. Other skills that can be affected by mouse movement is blooming step. So as you see there, I turned my blooming step around, which means I could turn my frontal guard, and that could potentially protect me from being CC'd in the back. Another skill is grapple arrow. Now grapple arrow got its whole mechanic change, so you can use backstep slash or the kicks. So we're just going to use backstep slash in this case. And as you see there, I was able to turn it. Now I didn't turn it very dramatically in this particular example, but you can turn it pretty dramatically and have the actual hit of grapple arrow CC an opponent, because if you go to grapple arrow, it is actually a stun on hit in PvP. So you could potentially weave that around someone's frontal guard and actually CC them. It is risky, admittedly, but it is an option for tech play, so. Alright, so when it comes to PvE add-ons, we focus a lot around redundancy for certain skills, and we got to think about our combo that we're using in PvE to really maximize the potential of our add-ons. So basically, the combo that I'm utilizing in PvE will be starting off with grouping up the mobs, using Red Moon, Sleet Stepping, and then doing a number of skills such as Drill, Moonrise, Frost Pillar, Tip of the Iceberg as an example. So I want to prioritize maximizing the potential output with those skills in that particular scenario. Now there's some other iterations of the combo that I have as basically redundancy, for that if I don't in a particular scenario want to use Red Moon, I can use Ice Fang instead and then lead off from there. These are the kind of PvE add-ons that I'm working with. Then again, you know, you don't have to follow my particular setup. It's just what I use, and it seems to work out fine. Alright, so for the PvE combo section, right here we're going to be using Bloody Monastery, the Elvia version of it. And this will be a pretty good example. Right now I'm currently rocking human damage, so I'm going to be pretty effective at killing the mobs here. I'm currently rocking 291 Kudum, so not too crazy, but pretty solid. And when you're doing any area like Sakraya, Bloody Monastery, Orcs, any other zone for that matter, if they have any sort of amount of HP, you're going to be utilizing this combo. If it's places like Poly and whatnot, you can pretty much just use your mobility skills and it'll kill entire packs, so you don't have to really worry about a combo. For areas like this, we're going to be focusing on grouping up the mobs, then we're going to Red Moon, Sleet Step, Pedal Drill, Moonrise, Frost Pillar, Tip of the Iceberg, and then if there's some cleanup that's necessary, we'll go ahead and incorporate Petal Bloom and Moonlight Dash as an example. So we're going to go ahead and buff up fully so you can get a true representation. We don't have our 100% buff right now, so we're going to go ahead and do one pack without it and then one pack with debuff to kind of simulate it. So we'll group up our mobs here. Now mind you, this isn't going to be the cleanest example, but as you see right there, took that entire pack no problem. And then our cooldowns are already ready to go again, so we can repeat. The only one that's not going to be up and ready to go is Petal Bloom and Moonlight Dash. So if you happen to have too much inconsistency with killing the packs without using Petal Bloom, Moonlight Dash, then maybe you need to incorporate some other skills like Ice Fang or Frost Flower as well. But for the most part, that combo should kill if you have any sort of decent gear. When you pop your E buff and whatnot, obviously that'll make it stronger. So we'll go ahead and pop our E buff. We'll grab some mobs over here. So we just straight up shredded all those really quickly. Again, you have it again. Combo is really quick and really short, and the cooldowns are really short, so it's very easy to be consistent with it and not have to worry about cooldowns or anything like that. So very effective combo. It might not necessarily be the most optimized combo, but it's a solid combo that I found. If you found a more optimized combo, by all means use that. But this should at least give you a baseline to work with. Alright, and there you have it. I hope you all learned something from the guide and enjoyed the content. I hope to do a succession guide in the near future, so make sure you hit that bell icon for the YouTube channel and subscribe so that you can get notifications on when that is posted. Make sure to check out my Twitch channel as well in the description, and also Lewis's YouTube channel as well, as he helped me a ton with putting this video together for you all. So make sure to show him some love. I'll see you all next time.